Hello, and welcome to another episode in the series Impact, where we speak to some amazing people doing amazing things, making a difference in the lives of others. And today we have another special guest with us. She is a project manager, speaker, podcaster, writer, radio producer, broadcaster, and works in the NHS. So, a very versatile lady. We have with us Sophia Peart. Hello, Sophia.
Hello there, Craig. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited about our conversation today.
It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward for us having our conversation and
Mm.
just hearing about you and knowing more about you and hearing about the impact you're making in all these different ways that you have been there. But for anybody who doesn't know Sophia, who is Sophia?
Oh, it's really hard to describe yourself to other people, isn't it? Like, so I can say what other people have said about me. I think that will probably be a start. Actually, no, I will say what other people have said about me, but I have been going on this journey this past year to actually say, who am I,
Right.
really? But what other people have said about me is I'm an encourager. Somebody recently just said I'm intelligent and smart. I'll take that. Um, I am a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm an auntie. I've served as a pastor. Um, but those are all things, those are roles that I play in life and everything. How I would define myself today is that I'm a daughter of the Most High.
Okay.
And I'm really, really trying to step into that identity and live that um, because doing life from there is different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's me.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that you're a pastor and you've served in ministry in various ways, including singing. I've never heard you sing. I didn't know you're a singer.
You didn't know?
No, I've never heard.
Actually, so I sang this past weekend, and a friend of mine that I've been friends with for about 5 years now actually said the same thing. I've never heard you sing.
Ah,
But singing was my first love. Before I became a pastor, I was a worship leader. So that's another thing that I do. And worship led at many different church events, even our joint camp meeting.
yeah,
I don't know if you remember the last time Henry Wright was here back in 2020, no, 2010.
yeah.
I remember that year specifically. 2011, actually, it was 2011. Um, I was put on the spot to
Hmm.
worship.
I'm not gonna put you on the spot now to sing, but I'll have to go and check those out because yeah. When I read that, I was like, I know you're a pastor. I know you do many different things, but I didn't realize you're a singer. But
Yeah.
I want to go back. I guess I'll hear some of the inspiration behind you doing all of these things. But who was Sophia as a little girl growing up, back in
Mm.
your primary school days?
Oh, Sophia was an inquisitive young lady. She was the only black girl in the school. So in junior school and in secondary school, she was the only black girl. And then when her brothers joined her in secondary school, she's no longer the only black person. But being the only black person, I guess, in that context, I learned how to navigate and play that game of, the game that we play of being um, fitting in the school area, but then at home being fully who you are, and kind of really playing between the two cultures. As a little girl, I was also eldest daughter,
Mm.
uh, but also sitting in the middle because I have three older sisters. Um, I was I it's interesting again because you thinking about what people have said about you. Oh, I do know. I was feisty. I was quick with my mouth, you know. But I think it's because I do think quickly about things, and so as a child, it comes across as feisty,
Yeah.
but it's actually, I would say, a superpower, a skill that I have to think quickly on my feet and to problem solve very, very quickly.
So,
That got misinterpreted as a child
mm,
and labeled. Um, because I was the eldest girl and the only girl for a while, I tended to operate and was comfortable operating on my own, so quite independent, because I had 4 younger brothers, and obviously they don't want to play with me, you know. So I became kind of like the caretaker, the one who looked after them and was put in charge to look after them. But when they didn't need my help or my support to look after them, then, you know, I did my own thing, so to speak. So I loved as a child, I'll never forget it, I loved reading.
Yeah.
So I read all of the Roald Dahl books, like literally within days.
Yeah.
And then I got into the high school sweetheart books.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think now they were a curse because they put in your mind a certain way of how relationship, you know, the fairy tale relationship and stuff like that. But I loved reading them, and I could enter into this fantasy world. I think I read Nadia, the King, Lion, the King, and Lion,
and
Witch in the Wardrobe.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was really inquisitive. I was creative in my mind. Like I said, I sang. So the singing actually came along because my mum was a singer, and she was brought up in the church. She sang, even went on tour in the US singing in the Pentecostal church. Right. And that was one of the things she wanted to install in us, singing, and also music. So I went and studied music. So I played the piano. I did play the piano up until grade 5, and then that was it. With my singing instead. So I was trained operatically to sing. So that's where my singing comes from. So that's Sophia as a child. There were, I guess I'm kind of framing it in a very pretty way.
Yeah.
Because there were traumas as well, you know.
I'm interested to find out, being the only Black child in a school, especially in the primary school, how did you navigate that, and what were the things that I know you said you were quick to respond because you had to defend yourself. I guess that helps you're always on the defensive or so. But what was that like? I know, you know, with racism play any part and any impact on you?
It's a great question. And when I look back, I can only say this is the grace of God, because from nursery school, then I think about primary school, and I think of secondary school. There's always been a teacher who looks out for me. Mm-hmm. My mom, obviously, like I said, had 4 boys who were younger than I am. So she needed, and she was out of her, my mom went to marry dad and came to live in Sheffield. So she was away from a network that would help with childcare.
Yeah.
So what happened is, at nursery, the nursery school teachers helped my mom with childcare.
Okay.
So they would take me, and they would take me shopping with them whilst my mom was nursing my brother or my brothers. So I can't say I didn't experience racism, because I did, but it was, I experienced the ignorance of some and the love of others.
Yeah.
And that's the best way for me to articulate it, because the racism didn't come from everyone. And I think at a very early age, like I said, nursery school age, infant school, I came to understand that, you know. So yes, I was called Blackie. Mm-hmm. Even I was brought up as well. The school that I went to was predominantly a Pakistani school, you know. So you're either calling someone Blackie or you're calling somebody, you know, the other term.
Right.
And that's how we lived. We also had neighbors. And I remember one particular neighbor, she just loved me to bits. So she would say to my mom, you know, anytime you need some help, I'll take Sophia. So I have vivid memories of spending a lot of time, and it was a white lady, you know, and spending a lot of time with her family. Yeah.
So it's interesting. You say the ignorance, and you as a child, looking back at it now, it's more the ignorance that you would say than somewhere that's outright racism, but it's a lack of knowledge.
Mm,
Um,
100%.
and as a child, did you with your parents, how did they help you to navigate that? Did they, have those conversation with you?
Yeah, I think when I noticed it the most, because I didn't experience a lot of it firsthand,
Right.
um, when I noticed that racism existed and the impact of that was how it affected my father in his work.
Mm.
So my father was a plasterer.
Yeah.
So he worked on building sites, and I have memories of him coming home and being extremely upset by how his contractor had treated him or by what somebody on the site had said to him, and that was either anger and frustration that would come out, and that's when I realized the real impact. And then, because for me, the the white people that I had around me, and for the most part, the Pakistani people that I lived with, they were fine. But I was a child, so I
Yeah.
saw the pain in my father's eyes. And I don't think it was until I came to secondary school, really, that I really saw, because again, in secondary school, I was the only black girl. Um,
Mm.
but I stood up for myself as well, Craig. So
Yeah.
I remember my brother, he just started, and it was like 2 weeks into him being in secondary school. And I got wind, somebody whispered in my ear and said that somebody's picking on my brother. I'm not having it. So, and this, I was in I was in second year at this time of secondary
Yes.
school.
Yes.
And this young lad who was picking on my brother was a first year, but his
Mm.
brother was a third year. And I stood up to the brother and held him up and said, "Do not play with my brother." You
Oh.
know? And I didn't have any fear about that. And I think it's
Mm.
because I also had my uncle and I had other people who I knew would have my back in
Yeah.
those types of situations. Plus, I'm a little bit fearless from that point of view because from a young age, I knew that God was with me.
Yeah.
So, and I truly believe that. One of the other things that I noticed, I mentioned it with nursery school, but also in secondary school, and even when I went to university, there was always one teacher
Hmm.
who would look out for me.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear about that impact. That what did that one teacher do or say that made that difference to the others and stood out so strong?
Yeah, I think they understood the background of where I was coming from, i.e.,
Hmm.
being the only daughter with four boys. So they understood that background. There was one particular teacher in secondary school. It was in my first year. It was an English teacher. I'll never forget her. She saw my writing, and she said she she asked me to stay behind after school. And she asked me to stay behind after school, and she wanted me to work on my writing and improve my writing skills. And this happened for about 3, 4 months, where I would stay behind once a week to work on my writing. And my writing today is how it is
Because
because
of
of her, because of the time and the care. I don't know what happened to this woman after that, because I heard that she went off on leave and then that's it. And it was almost, I guess I look back now and think she was just an angel in
yeah.
my life who took the time out to say, "Let me help you." And I would love to have met her today to say thank you, because she didn't just help me to write, she also instilled a confidence in me and she saw me. Um, and that's really important.
Why do you know why she did that? Do you have any idea why what was it in your writing that she saw? Was it the potential? Was it, that you were falling behind? What was it that she saw that she specifically gave you that input?
She said at the time I wasn't taking my time to form the words, so it was messy.
Okay.
So I needed to take my time and form the letters, the
Mhm.
letters properly, right on the line, um, and just really take time. Um, yeah,
I wish I had a teacher like that. My handwriting would be far much better now. But thanks to technology, you don't have to write that much.
yeah. I remember after that having a love for writing, especially with, I don't know if you remember back in the day, we used to write with a calligraphy pen. So we didn't
Mhm.
write with a ballpoint pen. We had to write with a calligraphy pen.
Right.
And that was completely different because you had to do the ink and you had to make sure that you put a little pressure, but not too much so you don't split the reed.
Yes.
Um, yeah. Now looking back at it, I feel very touched.
Mm. I wonder if we can find that teacher. It would be lovely to find that teacher for you.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
she would, and I guess this is the thing about, us, we just people just need to understand that those small things is going to make a big difference to someone's life, and never know what that little action you do, and how much it will make a difference to someone's life. Uh,
Absolutely.
and then you went on to secondary school and you had a similar incident or similar teacher impacting you that way.
So that was in secondary school
Oh,
where
that
she
was
taught
it.
me
Yeah.
how to write. I went on to college.
Mhm.
Again, I had someone who looked out for me at college. She just wanted me to win. She just wanted me to get through. Um, she just wanted me to get through. She was, I'll never forget, she was very eccentric. Yet when she approached me with such tenderness, and would say, "Look, I know your potential." And I think this is one of the things I was very vocal in class. Made all the connections, could answer the questions, but there was a problem with me articulating that on the page and in writing. Now, I'm grown now and I understand where that came from in my childhood.
Right.
But going through school, knowing that I understood, but I couldn't articulate that, not just in my writing, but on the page, my articulation when I'm
Right.
writing, was really frustrating. It was frustrating for me, but it was frustrating for the teachers because they knew that I knew it.
Yeah.
I had the same issue when I went to university. I would have anxiety attacks in my examinations. And then I would be very slow to write my papers. And it's not that I didn't understand, or I'd sit down and discuss my paper for hours with my lecturer.
Yeah.
Again, at university, there was one who just took the time out. We'd sit for hours and he would just work it through. I have discovered since that I am dyslexic. Um, but I'm just so grateful because those individuals really did impact my life.
I think I always say that we are all on the spectrum, for dyslexia, and as you spoke, I can relate to that because I do a lot of talking and I understand things, but I always find it difficult to write. And a lot of the times I remember going to university and college and it was like, I just want to pass because I'm not, just to finish that paper, just to do that project, it's always going to take something. And you always, to write a letter or to write an email, it's so difficult. But if I'm talking to you, it just goes. So I
Yeah,
relate to that very much so.
yeah, you get it. I get what you mean as well. I get
Yeah.
what you mean. I'm even thinking about it now because obviously I left university. Went into healthcare, and then left from there to go and do my masters. And again, this time, again, there was a number of people. One particular person, when it came to write my essays, he was a student, and I shared with him the struggle that I was having, and he would actually have me sit next to him in the library and write paragraph for paragraph, and he would read each paragraph as I wrote it. And I think, wow, later on, the payoff. was
Yeah.
that I would teach him how to cook, which I thought was cool. I had no problem with that, and his wife was very happy. but but
So,
yeah. Hmm?
so you're a cook as well. I tell you, it's very versatile. What's your favorite dish for cooking?
Oh, so I make a beautiful salmon. Like my friends love when I make salmon, but I've got a really beautiful recipe of salmon. Um, I'm not going to share it now because it's
No,
my secret.
it's a secret. Hopefully, one of these days I'll taste it.
It never fails. It
Right.
never fails.
Right. You talk about your mom and your dad. Tell us what influence or what important were they to you, and what did they instill in you? And
Mm, great question. They've instilled so much into me. So many things. My father, his buzzword um, was grace,
Mhm.
the grace of God, and and as I've grown up, I've come to understand, especially when I understand his story, why grace was so important to him, and now in my own journey of life, why the articulation of grace that he gave to me becomes so real in my life. Um, so because of grace, my parents got baptized the year that I was born. So they came to Christ. My mum was already in Christ,
Right.
but came into the Adventist church. My dad had left for a while Christ and was rebaptized the same year that I was born and the same year that they got married. So there was a lot going on for them at that time. But it meant that I grew up in an Adventist home. Um, my mum was still had the Pentecostal in her, so
Mhm.
the whole feeling, singing with feeling
Yeah.
experience of Christ was really important for her in our journey. So I have memories of her expressing her love for God, her frustration of God, and that taught me how to be with God as well
Yeah.
to a certain degree. Um, One of the other things that they taught me was certain disciplines, um, prayer, going to prayer meeting, how important that was. I remember as a child, they used to, on Wednesday evenings, we would come in from school, have something to eat, go and bathe, and then they would take us to prayer meeting so that when we got home, we would go straight to bed. And that discipline, and I remember when my father would still go and we were a little bit older and my mom would say, sometimes she wouldn't go, I would still want to go to prayer meeting with my dad because I
Yeah.
saw that as a thing that he did because he recognized he needed that time of prayer. Um, Recently, I've just been renovating my home,
Mhm.
and my mum was very practical, very hands-on, and I think that's something that I've taken from her. A level of being able to. There's nothing too hard. We'll just figure it out. My
Yeah.
mum
You're a bit of a DIY person.
just a little bit. That doesn't mean okay. So when I know that there's someone around who can do it, I'm
Yeah.
like this.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me make that really clear. But if I'm on my own,
Mhm.
I'm gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm not one that doesn't cry for help. I need help when I need help. But if I have to make it happen, I've seen my mom change the whole house whilst my dad's been is at work. And she's had us kind of put curtains up, redecorate, move furniture, and just the ability to figure things out. My mom's a great planner. And I think I've got that from her as well, the
Okay.
ability to be able to plan and make things happen, you know. So I think those are some of the things, some of the really positive things that I've been able to get from them. I think one of the greatest gifts was and is still today having a knowledge of God.
Yeah. Your mom sounds a bit like my mom. She was always
Really?
she always changing the house, and my dad was a painter, so
Mhm.
he would get my dad to paint the house like every year. They need to do some painting, and she would always be dusting done and wiping and moving furnitures, and
Mhm.
it's putting up new curtains here and there. So yeah, it reminds me of my mom.
You don't realize how much you pick up from that, though, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's the beauty about life. You know, some of the things is not what is said, but is what is done.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering who else. I mean, you talk about the church and your faith, and you grew up in the church and learning those faith basis things from your parents. But how else? Who else was there of significant impact on you, whether through journeys, through faith or so? Who else
Mm.
circle?
So many people. I have godparents in my life, spiritual guardians, and they have been a blessing in my life. I have, those aunties
Yes.
that they're not your blood aunties, but they are aunties. And just thinking about just thinking about them now brings tears to my eyes because they really have spoken powerfully in my life, not just as a child, but even to this day. Um, One person in particular, my mum would call her and ask her to come and have conversations with me when I was lagging behind at school. And I remember her coming and having chats with me and supporting me. And then, we didn't see each other for maybe about 15 years, maybe even a bit more than that.
Yeah.
And we reconnected when I went to Newbold. And she became a sounding board again, a place of safety when I was going through ministry. And even to this day, it's not even like a mentor relationship anymore. Like she's family to me. She,
Yeah.
when we have a reciprocal relationship now, which is beautiful, which is absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful for that.
Now.
There's so many people that have had an impact in my life. I couldn't name them all,
mm,
and I think that's down to um, my mum and the relationships that she's kept with people, um, and my ability to be able to um, embrace some of those as well, and maintain them as I've gone through life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have done your studies all through to university, and you got into the work world, and I'm interested to see this journey from project manager to speaker to writer to broadcaster from NHS to pastoring, and tell me that journey and what
Ooh,
some of the things you learned along that journey.
you say all of that, and I'm like, oh wow, that's what I have done. So my dream of working in the NHS, I think, began with my mom. She worked as a care assistant, and she worked at a hospital in Sheffield called the Northern General. And she used to go and pick up her wage slip from the administrative block in the Northern General, which was a old workhouse building. I know some of the hospitals still have those structures hidden amongst all the new builds that they have. And I remember as a child standing there at the entrance of this building with a large um, staircase and seeing managers walk down the staircase and go their business. And I used to think, I want to do that one day. And I finished university, decided to come back home, and landed a job. And it's only the grace of God. Basically, I phoned the department that had a job and said, I'd like to come in and shadow you for a day. And the lady said, well, we've just gone out for advert for a role. Nobody's applied. Why don't you come in and apply for it?
Wow.
Right. And it was only a 6-month contract. And that 6 months ended up being 12 years.
Wow. I guess you worked yourself into that, isn't it? By your work attitude and everything that made that 6 months become 12 years.
Yeah. And the grace of God.
And the grace
Like,
of God, of course.
and the grace of God, like literally, I can do all things through Christ. Anything that was presented to me that I knew I couldn't do, I say this to anyone, find somebody who can.
Yeah.
There's always a way. And if it is outside of your skill set, then leave it alone. Leave it completely alone. But this was within what I could do. And yeah, I think, and I believe that your work precedes you. Your work goes ahead of you.
Yes.
So that's what happened for me. 6 months became a 9-month contract, became a 12-month contract, became another department seeing my work and saying, we want her to come and work with us. So I get seconded to go to another department, come back again. Another department says, we want her to come and work with us. Go and write a business case in clinical informatics for 9 months, come back for general surgery to say, we want her. And, job descriptions were written based on my skills and experience.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't really say that, but that's the truth.
But I guess that's a lesson to learn for us. That sometimes you have to be in control, but based on your attitude, your work, and everything, it opens up the opportunities for people to want you to create that space and write that job description, because it's just how the way of life, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of known in the organization as the troubleshooter. So I was given some of the hardest projects in the trust, with some of the greatest challenges. One had a historic backlog and needed to get accredited for as a regional site, and they called me in to be project manager for that and to be service manager in that area. Again, Craig, it's literally, when I saw what needed to be done, then I had 3 weeks out to go to Kenya to do mission work. And we had 3 months to clear this historic backlog. I can only say it's by the grace of God, and literally I went, and I still do this now. I know God has placed me in that place. I know that he will give me all the skills necessary. I know that whenever anything seems difficult or whatever I'm doing, just commit it to the Lord. Commit it to the Lord, and he does everything else.
So you have done 12 years of project management and you're back in it now. But then after 12 years, you went and you changed the lane, I suppose. What was that about, and how did that come about?
I'm glad you asked. So after doing probably about 10 years, I started to get quite itchy in the role. I was also in the background doing a lot of ministry. So did youth ministries, a lot of youth ministries actually, worked with the NEC,
right.
Youth department, the youth director at the time, which was Pastor Steve Palmer, and then Pastor Alan Hush. So worked with them for a considerable amount of time, came back to my home church, was the youth leader there, leading the young people, leading worship, leading women's ministries. So I was really involved, trained as a Bible worker, also did and did the CHIP program. Do you remember the CHIP program? Yeah. So really involved in ministry, and I loved it. It was like my heartbeat. I absolutely loved it. So 10 years into working in the NHS, I remember I used to sit and look out of the window and think about the amount of Bible studies that I could be doing if I wasn't sat here, and just this burning desire to do more for God, but didn't know what to do or how to act on it. I remember my best and closest friend, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And before she passed away, one of the things that she asked me was, are you happy? And I said, I'm content with where God has me right now. I know he wants more from me, but until he shows me, I'm pretty good now, I'm content. Literally after she died, I went into a season of prayer and fasting for 6 months. So one day every week, and I was praying and fasting for what God wanted for my life, because I saw at 32, when she passed, life was short, and she'd made the impact that she needed to make for her life.
Yeah.
But that question that she asked me just rang so strong, and I needed to seek the Lord's direction. And towards the end of that year, when I was praying and fasting for 6 months, like literally, God really started to work. I was leading worship, working with the NEC Music and Worship Department, and the director at the time encouraged me to go and visit Andrews University for a music and worship conference. So
that's in the US.
That's in the US, Andrews University seminary, Adventist seminary. So I went over and met quite a few people, met some of the deans for the schools, but the dean from the seminary, associate dean, on one of my final days called me aside. And he said, "Young lady, I believe the Lord is calling you for ministry."
Mm.
Craig, I looked him dead in the eye. And I said, "I don't believe he's calling me because he hasn't told me anything." Remember I said I was feisty as a child?
quick with your words.
And but that rang in my ear. The year before that, earlier that year, like I said, I was leading worship at the joint NEC camp meeting, and people were saying the same thing to me at that camp meeting. You know, you've been called for ministry. You've got an anointing on your life, and so I came back and realized how feisty I was to the associate dean. And so actually I need to seek the Lord on this and just kind of find out what's going on, because he is a man of God, you know, so God would have spoken to him about something. And from there, started to explore what God wanted for my life in that season. And he led me. I thought I was going to Andrews, but that door was firmly closed, which I was okay with.
Right.
And I went to New Bold College instead. I remember visiting New Bold College on one of their Visit Us promotions, and sitting in the gardens, Sylvia's gardens, and the Spirit giving me such a great sense of peace and saying to me, "This is where I want you to be." Mm. So once I got that direction from the Lord, which was 2 years later, and you know, also having my pastor on my back about it as well.
Nudging you.
Yeah, like he would call me every day. And I was like, "Will you just leave me alone?" But it's because he could see the call on my life, and I appreciate it. Ended up going to New Bold College and just seeing the Lord literally, because one of the things that he said to me as well was, he showed me I think it's in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, spiritual things are spiritually discerned.
Yes.
So on this journey, where I have you right now, he was saying to me, you can't tell everybody everything, because, and God didn't reveal to me everything either. So I didn't go in thinking that I'm going to be a pastor. I went going in because there's a call on my life and I'm going to study for ministry. Yeah. Wherever that leads me, that's up to God, but I'm accepting this call. My fees were paid. Mm. God has a way of confirming his path and his way. Yeah. My fees were paid in a miraculous way, Craig. For the first and second semester, of my first year, which I would have had to have paid at the time £11,000. It was paid. There's testimonies along the line.
Yes. Because I was thinking, you know, you are moving from a secure job into now going back into school, which definitely is going to have an impact on, you know, your finances and how you go forward. So, yeah.
100%. I mean, I went down to earning £80 a week. Mm. Still had a mortgage. And God provides. God provided. I was living better then. Serious. Financially, I was in God just provides, you know. And I think very early on, he wanted to show me that and teach me that he is Jehovah Jireh.
Yeah.
So he was really, in the Bible, God presents himself and shows up in different ways at different points in time to the children of Israel.
Yeah.
And so for definite, at that point in time, he was Jehovah Jireh. Moving into ministry, I think he became Jehovah Nisi and my protector.
Yeah.
He definitely became my protector. Yeah.
And he led you through that, and you did your a time in ministry. I would say, once a pastor, always in ministry. You're going to always have that role. But you then decide to go back to your first love, should I say?
Yeah, I think that I hold them both dearly in my arms as my loves, because I've done them both together.
Yeah. Well, which is a good thing, because whatever you do, project management, you're project managing for God, isn't it?
100%. And I think because with the NHS, so I sensed my time was up for various reasons, and it was painful to make that decision. But again, those people, those aunties, that I spoke about earlier, they showed up in my life to guide and to help and to pray with me. And God added a couple more bonus aunties into the bucket. My mum was there to support as well, and other family members were really, really supportive in my transition. And again, I saw the hand of God, as I transitioned back in just a miraculous way. So much so that that only God can do this. And I guess it's almost like the children of Israel when they're passing through, they need to get across the Red Sea, and only God could part the water. But that always becomes a memorial, something you look back at to remind you that if God's done that in the past, he's going to do it again.
Yeah.
So coming back, the transition has been a wave, almost like the grieving process for one part, which isn't a bad thing, because as you said, it was a love.
Yeah.
So a grieving process, but and also a process of acceptance of this is where God has you now, and he's not done with you yet.
Yes.
He's not done with you yet. Me transitioning back and coming back to Sheffield doesn't mean that my life is over. It's just a new chapter.
Yeah.
He has me in a place right now, almost like a cocoon, where he's just being so caring and sending people into my life who are caring and kind, and just, it's just beautiful to follow the Lord.
So he has done so many things, and I know your motto is "I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me," and he has proven that over and over again. But along the way, you have done a bit of writing and broadcasting, and you also have the Woman with Jesus podcast. Tell us a bit about that podcast and the impact you're making with your ministry and your podcast.
Yeah. So remember I said I had a problem with writing when I was younger, and I understood where it came from. So therapy, you wanted to know impact? Therapy is really important for us to work through our issues. But once I came to understand my difficulty with writing, one of the things that I asked the Lord to do was to help me to write. And every Wednesday morning for the last 4 or 5 years, God has woken me up, and I write a devotional called the Wisdom Wednesdays.
Okay.
My name Sophia means wisdom, so there's a twist there on words. So that's writing. I've written other devotionals for the publications, written for the Messenger and Focus magazine. I enjoy articulating my thoughts now. And every single time I write something, I think back to that little girl who struggled to write. I think back to that English teacher who took me aside and helped me with my handwriting, even though we type these days. There's something there, in believing that I can do it. And so it's something I really enjoy. I enjoy being creative with my words and encouraging people, but also being able to speak and share about Jesus, which is one of the things that I was able to do on the radio.
Yes.
And in my producing and broadcasting days, I enjoyed sharing, and not just sharing my joy for God, but allowing other people to share as well. I think we had a time, didn't we, Craig, with the young people?
Yes, we did. I think that's the first time when I met you. We worked with the young people doing some work on, I think it was an Easter Christmas program.
Christmas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that I love to do, is give other people a platform as well. If I'm on the platform and I can see somebody else can sit here as well. One of my other mottos is don't leave anyone, always bring somebody along with you.
Yes.
Always bring someone along with you. So to be able to expose the children at that time to the radio, and then years on, if I switch on Adventist Radio London, hear the children's voices,
yes,
it warms my heart so much, because I think back to that Sunday where they had this miraculous experience.
And that was an impact, and they still talk about that even
really?
they still talk about that experience, and it continues to do radio programs. So the opportunity that they got then was, I must say thank you for that.
Oh, praise God. Like I said, we leave nobody, we always bring somebody along. And if I can bring somebody along, that's what I'm doing. So the Women with Jesus podcast actually came out of a Bible study. Basically, during the pandemic, I suffered depression. I know many people did. And I realized that I needed to get back in the Word. There was a couple of ladies that also wanted to do the same thing. And I experienced my struggle the most on a Sunday morning. So I thought, wow, let's study on a Sunday morning, and let me just invite other women to come along as well. So I started a women's Bible study group called Sunday Mornings with Jesus. And basically, like the women who went to go and attend to Jesus's body on that Sunday morning, we would wait to go and sit with Jesus on Sunday morning.
I see what you do there with the words, woman of Jesus.
You see what I mean? So from there, we've had one women's retreat so far. I'm hoping that we can have another one in the future. I have around about 160 women in the group. They don't all come out to the study, but they're involved in the group, and they pray together as well. I've trained a couple of the ladies to actually keep the group going when I'm not available to run the Bible studies, which is great. But one of the things that came out of it, which you've alluded to, is the Women with Jesus podcast. What happened is some of the women were saying, look, we've got board meetings, we've got this and that, we've got children to take care of, which I totally appreciate. And this is just the busy life of women.
Yeah.
They really wanted to delve into the Word and hear the stories of the Bible from a woman's perspective.
Okay.
Because it's different when we tell the story of the woman with the issue of blood.
Yeah.
From the, because we know what it's like.
Yes. Women definitely see things differently from men.
Absolutely. So it was really refreshing to do the Bible study and then jump on the podcast and actually still go through it. And as I said, if I've got a platform, I'm going to bring some ladies along with me. So a couple of my friends join me on the podcast, and we have a conversation, a conversational Bible study. So there's a lot of banter that goes on as well. A lot of laughter, and then there's serious moments as we study in the Word of God. So I find it is an extreme honor to be able to launch something like that. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I've
So,
been involved in.
so you're writing and a podcast. Any books out as it?
Not yet. There are
But what?
manuscripts currently in
So watch this space for that book. But
house.
your podcasts are available where they're available.
Podcast is available on Amazon Music and Spotify. Yes, those are the key places. So Amazon Music, Spotify. You can find the Women with Jesus podcast.
And your Wednesday devotionals, are they available online?
They are available on WhatsApp. So all you need to do is find the Wisdom Wednesdays channel on WhatsApp,
Okay.
add yourself, and you will get the weekly devotional straight to your phone. In the future, I may be uploading it onto a blog page, but most of the people that it goes out to at the moment, I send it out to about 500 people, and I know that they send it out to others. So it's going worldwide at the moment. I missed a week last week, and I got scolded for it.
You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that.
I know, but it has been a joy, especially when the Lord wakes me up with a message or gives it to me. He gave me the message this morning for tomorrow. So
Yeah.
really excited to share and to impact people's lives in that way.
As we come to an end, and it's just so fascinating. I feel like there's so much we could explore and talk about because you have only touched the surface, and I'm sure probably when we get your book, we'll get more in details about the way the Lord have worked for you and all the different things you're doing. But I just want to ask this before you go in terms of the struggles you had with writing and the work you have done, you have gone up through ministry with the youth and so forth. How do you see technology impacting ministry, or whether positive or negatively, and how have you used the technology? Is it something that you embrace in your writing?
100%. I think technology has impacted everything that we do. So in my writing, just the ability to be able to press send and share, and know that it's shared with hundreds of other people as well, gives me a sense of, it makes me feel very humble
Yeah.
and, and committed to sharing because it's being shared and because it's having an impact on people's lives. In terms of ministry, I think one of the most significant impacts that I saw it had was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
One of the churches that I pastored at the time, we were able to run an evangelistic campaign. Now, I must say, this is a 30-member church, and they ran a campaign that had over 1,000, 2,000 people at one point per evening.
Yeah.
During the campaign, during the pandemic. Like that just blows my mind at a time when people needed hope.
Yes.
We use technology and do ministry in such a powerful way. And, we go on to do that. I mean, we're doing this now, this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
which is great, you know what I mean, to share. I think whatever medium we can use to share the gospel, share our story, which the gospel is within our story as well. If we allow God into our lives, the gospel will come out.
Yes.
So any medium that we can use it for the glory of God. We can't go wrong.
That's well said. I just want to say, I've learned so much about you that I didn't know. I'm still going to find you singing. I need to taste your sermon, and I wait to read your book. And I will definitely get on to the Wisdom Wednesday. And I've been listening to some of your podcasts. So there's so much I've learned, but I'm sure there's so much more to hear from you in the years to come. What is it? What would we see, or what will it be for 10 years in 10 years time?
Oh, do you know, I don't know.
Okay.
I have dreams in my heart and I have written them down. So yeah, to say I don't know is actually not the truth. I do know a book will come very soon. I want to continue. One of the things that I love to do, as I've said before, is empowering people. So I also do coaching with women. So that's something that I didn't mention. I do my year ahead coaching. So I want to be able to develop that further, to be able to impart some of the gifts and the skills that I've learned and tools that I've learned along the way into other people's lives to help them develop and be the best that they can be and attain the goals that God has for their lives. You know, Jesus has called us to a life that he wants us to live more abundantly in him.
Yes.
Because blood was shed for our lives. So, and one of the things that I learned a few years ago, that we cannot cause our lives to be in vain of that blood that was shed.
Yeah.
We have to live it to full potential. And that's why I love what you do, Craig. I love that you found your niche. I love that you're working it and that you're just letting the Lord lead you. I love that.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Inspiration from you and support from you, definitely. Thank you.
Praise God. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you for spending the time talking with us and sharing your story and sharing with us ways you were impacted and the way you are impacting others. And I'm sure if people want to get in touch with you, you still go and speak, and you are available to motivate others, so they'll be able to. You can contact me, or you have your network.
Yeah, I can share with you my linked tree link so that you can contact me to book me for speaking events, or if you want to book onto any of the things. It also has a link to my Wisdom Wednesdays, so I can share it with you.
Yes.
And you can add it to the podcast.
Sure, I will do that. Well, thank you very much again for joining us and for being with us today.
It's been a blessing.
So there you go, another interesting discussion with a versatile lady. Until next time, see you. Bye.